Welcome to the fourth and final video for Week 7. This one, of course, covers the stacks, which quarterback duo is paired with his receivers, which running back duo is paired with their defenses, etc., etc. We feel like using this week, we think will be beneficial to use this week. But before we get to the stacks, Jim McCormick and I, we want to let you know about this free trial we got going on, which of course includes the position ranking. Good thing I can talk. Projections, cheat sheets, and all the things that are included. Let me get you a screen share here. 1 second. Here we go. Boom. You get the RotoCurve NFL Week 7 free trial. Of course, all the stuff that I just said is included along with the optimized lineups for both FanDuel and DraftKings. You get all the tools that include red zone utilization, points per snap, all the things that you want. You get the rotocurve.com free trial at rotocurve.com/free-trial. Imagine that. Just go ahead and check it out. Jim, we know you'll be checking it out, but you'll also be checking out some stacks to use this week. We've already discussed the quarterbacks. We've already discussed the backs. We've already discussed the receivers. So let's start pairing them. Where do we start in terms of stacks this week?
Well, two guys that I highlighted as cash plays. And they both actually have some tournament appeal too, because I don't think they're always obviously separate commodities. I mean, really the idea being how much ceiling do these guys have? And I think Andy Dalton and A.J. Green is kind of the chalk stack this week. It gets you the reason that it's affordable is because Dalton's not very expensive, and Green is even somewhat of a discount from say Julio Jones, for example, and Matt Ryan kind of increased price range, which it's viable to pay up for those guys. Don't get me wrong, but I just think it makes it more affordable because at least for me, I'd like to pay up a little bit at running back, at least one of them. I want one stud running back, whether that be DeMarco Murray, whether that be, LaShawn McCoy, assuming he's healthy. So I think that's an opportunity there. I'm going to steal a little bit of your thunder. I think one of the most intriguing stacks for upside would be Bortles and Robinson. I just think, this Raiders team, I keep calling everybody the Saints, but really the Lions are the Saints are the Saints, and the Raiders are the Saints in terms of that identity as being the team to go against. I think just points per drive and all those things are in play. And if they're ever going to get it together, it's going to be at home against this Oakland team that's been giving up more yards and points per drive than any other team in the AFC. My one last stack that I'll recommend, actually I have two more, they'll be quick, would be DeMarco Murray and the Titans defense. I think is somewhat interesting. The Titans have the highest blitz rate in the NFL over the last month, and Dick LeBeau can get to guys. I think, Murray, if he's your kind of chalky stud running back, Tennessee could be interesting on the defensive side. And then I'm going to do a triple stack here, get into it sounds like a new burger kind of, but I'm going to go with Winston, Jacquizz Rodgers. You just mentioned to me before the show, and it's all over Twitter already, is that Doug Martin had a setback. We're not going to see him this week. It's probably a multi-week thing, to be honest. So Jacquizz Rodgers with that incredible volume, I think there's enough play volume here that it won't just be like last week where it was almost all running, or 2 weeks ago rather, where it's almost all running with Tampa and Jacquizz. I think you're going to see some value here for Winston, Rodgers, and then Mike Evans. So I think that's my favorite stack of the week. I think this 49ers team is kind of just, as we've seen with Chip Kelly, is so inviting for fantasy upside.
There you go. I know you've already went over some of the ones, but Dalton, A.J. Green, of course, the top of my list. I love that matchup against Cleveland. That just is not going to have a whole lot to say in terms of covering A.J. Green. I love Blake Bortles to Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns. I'm going to have some shares of both. The one I think I want the most is Allen Robinson. I do think this is finally the week we get 100 yards and a touchdown from him. But, of course, against this Oakland defense that's allowing the most yards in total, not per game, but in total to wide receivers per week, I do think that Bortles connection finally comes alive. Some of the ones that we mentioned in the other segments were Kirk Cousins. I think you can pair him a bunch of different ways. I think you can actually pair him if Jordan Reed plays. I think you could go Cousins, Garcon, and Reed. I think there will be enough value there. I think Cousins is going to throw multiple touchdowns in this one. The tight ends are always the way to target this team. Vernon Davis would be a guy that I would love if Reed's out, but it's trending towards him playing, I think. We'll see. But, the tight ends against Detroit is like we mentioned, it's like James Harden against shooting guards in Sacramento. It's really one you want to target every week. So Cousins to Reed, and along with Pierre Garcon, who's seen a ton of targets against this bad passing defense. That's one I'm interested in. Obviously, Matt Ryan to Julio Jones is one we mentioned. And again, Joe Flacco, you kind of alluded to it earlier. I'm waiting on the status of his shoulder, but if he's active, I do want to pair Joe Flacco and Mike Wallace in tournaments for sure. Let's talk about some deeper tournament stacks, because I think a lot of those are at least, somewhat chalky. Is there any deeper ones that we haven't covered?
I think one that you touched on the receiver, but I just think like game flow or game script wise, the highest over under of the week is in Atlanta. It's 53.5 points. It's a really high point total. So even as dogs, even as touchdown dogs, the Chargers are going to have to push the ball. I know we've discussed Melvin Gordon could have some upside in the passing game, but really it's just, the Atlanta secondary fails to engage in shootouts. So even if they don't love to, they regularly do. I think a Rivers Tyrell Williams stack is interesting. I think it's a way to again, it's a modest way to do it. I don't love the floor because Williams' usage has been up and down, but I think he's the big play guy, at least because Rivers doesn't really have a big vertical arm to get Travis Benjamin the looks that we'd want. So Tyrell Williams is interesting. Who are some kind of sneakier stacks that you're looking at?
Well, here's one that I think is a little sneaky, that just because people won't be thinking. Again, every week I want to give you a quarterback, running back one, because last week it worked for us, right? We went Tyrod and we went LaShawn McCoy. I think the way to do it this week might be, and you're going to kind of have to get lucky with the play calling here, but Matt Ryan, Devontae Freeman. A lot of times when they're near the goal line, they like to, drop back in terms of kind of like the old Brian Westbrook play for the Eagles, where you drop back and you got Devontae Freeman there and you kind of just shuffle past to him. I've seen him do it a few times this year.
Okay, yeah.
To Devontae Freeman. Also, obviously he's catching screens all over the field. If he takes one to the house, that is nice. And, San Diego defense is pretty giving. So I think, some of these quarterback ones that people don't think of, but if they're catching receiving touchdowns, Brady to James White kind of thing, there's a lot of value to be had there. And obviously backs are catching receiving touchdowns on a weekly basis, so I think people overlook that, and I want to kind of reiterate that every week, that is one worth using. I mentioned my affinity for Victor Cruz and the fact that Eli Manning kind of showed signs of life for the first time last week. If this Eli Manning bounce back is for real, this LA defense really isn't one that I'm that scared of. So I think you could go Manning to Cruz or Manning Beckham Cruz this week if you're going for a really deep kind of a shot in the dark. Obviously Jeff Fisher, when he's around 500, is bound to lose a game one of these times. So if Eli Manning's bounce back is for real, his offensive line has improved. The running game sucks, so I think it could be a spot where he gets it done. The other one is another running back quarterback. This is just a one shot type thing. How about Mariota to Marco Murray? Because I mentioned that that Colts defense not good against receiving backs, and this is a very good receiving back. We saw that Lamar Miller play last week where he went from one side of the field all the way to the other to score. I think Murray's just as good. So most of my stacks this week, I'm going quarterback, running back. Otherwise, I'm going kind of the chalk ones and surrounding it with guys that I like. Did we miss anything in terms of stacks that you think is worth covering?
No, I think we got it. There's enough of a blend there. It's not just your traditional quarterback receiver stack. One obvious stack that if you can afford it, I think makes sense would just be like I went over in the quarterback section, just Tom Brady, his crazy numbers. 300 yards per game, 24 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. His last 10 against Pittsburgh. That's pretty silly. If you're gonna get a hold of that. If you don't want to pay up for Gronk, I actually think Edelman is due here. he had a 71% catch rate last year, and it's down to 52% this year. And if you look at the tape, they've just missed on a couple big like underneath routes where Edelman had a lot of daylight. So however you want to construct that, if you're going to go in tournaments, I don't love paying up for Brady and cash particularly just because there's these better options, or comparable options at cheap prices. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see Brady and Edelman or Brady and Gronk in one of the big tournament wins this week.
Let me throw one more out there, because if you're going, let's say 15, 20 lineups, I do think this one is worth using, and it's kind of a trend from last week, is the Kaepernick-Torrey Smith pairing. Because if we're theorizing now that the backs out are going to have to go with a Mike Davis drawn duo, we're not sure that that's going to be productive at all. And we do think that Tampa Bay, we like them. We like Mike Evans. We like Winston. We like pretty much everyone on that offense this week. So how about Kaepernick, who kind of locked on to Torrey Smith last week? It's not Jeremy Curley anymore with Kaepernick. He kind of likes to rush around, create some time, and Torrey Smith is the one to get deep. And we know Kaepernick has more of a strong arm than an accurate arm, to say the least. If he gets free for maybe 5 seconds, one play, looks downfield, they could make a long connection. And Kaepernick's certainly good with his legs, which creates some upside at his price tag. So I think in order to fit everything else, that's two cheap guys. You get 3,800 Torrey Smith. I think Kaepernick's 5,300 for tournaments only. Definitely not a cash play. I think that is a shot in the dark that has potential to win $1 million kind of thing. Anything else to say? Any more words of advice this week before we sign off, Jim?
No, I think it's actually, we've had kind of general appraisals of weeks. I think this is a good week, and just in terms of there's some fun offenses. There's a lot of shootouts. There's a lot of over-unders, over 46, which is a good sign. So I think there's a lot of opportunities, and I think, like you said, it's a week for multiple lineups. I think it's a week for you to obviously have your set of guys you want to build from, but I would be pretty diverse in my lineup building. I think kind of finding that perfect mix is going to require some creativity.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think cash games build around Murray, Jacquizz now. Spend up a little at receiver, spend down at tight end would be my preferred method. And then in tournaments, go crazy. Spend up wherever you want, spend down wherever you want. There are a lot of good options everywhere. It's going to be an interesting week. So we will see what kind of lineup wins the million this week. It should be interesting. But before we go, we do want to let you know again, we got this free trial going on at RotoCurve. And of course, rotocurve.com/free-trial. You get everything that's included in the membership, rankings, projections, cheat sheets, tools like DVP, points per 10th, red zone. You get the optimized lineup, so you definitely want to check that out for free. You just can't get anything better for $0 than that. So go ahead and check it out. With Jim McCormick, I am Ricky Sanders, and until next week, we are out.